Yeah, so welcome back. In this particular video, we are going to talk about something which is called as your SDLC. That means your software development life cycle model. This SDLC or the software development life cycle is nothing but a process. This process helps us in producing softwares with high quality and low price. That means the aim is to optimize everything. On one side, I am talking about high quality, and on the other side, I am talking about low price. So, this SDLC is providing us a very well structured flow for the processes which are involved in order to help an organization to quickly produce a high quality software application, and that's what the ultimate aim is. So your SDLC works by lowering the cost while simultaneously improving the quality aspect. And this can be achieved, of course. Lowering the price can be achieved by reducing the production time, right? So I can reduce the production time, and that ultimately helps in lowering the cost. That's something which is a major point of concern, that a particular project should not go beyond the deployment date, because then you have to pay the penalty, you have to pay for all the people involved in developing the particular application. So this particular plan starts by evaluating your existing systems for the existing deficiencies, and later on we take certain steps which I'll explain you with the help of this particular diagram. So this is nothing but a generic SDLC, and one of the SDLC model which is waterfall model is totally almost dependent on this particular part. So what it does is that, as you see from the figure, I go ahead with the requirements gathering and analysis. So what I do is I'll try to identify the requirements specified by the client, and I'll do some analysis that are there any problems associated. So this particular SDLC takes input this particular phase of SDLC is taking inputs from all the stakeholders. That can be your end user, or it can be your developers, salespeople, industry experts, programmers, and so on and so forth. And I'll try to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the current system, and in order to improve the overall application. That's what the ultimate aim is. So this is something which is very crucial stage in your SDLC. So normally the senior members of the team will give inputs, and these inputs will be from both the ends, from the customers and from the sales department, and maybe some surveys they might have done in order to come up with a quality product. So this particular input is then used to plan the initial steps and to identify that, okay, whether the things which we are planning is feasible or not, right? Whether it is feasible or not. And it's like, let's say I'm running a company with 5 employees. I'm taking a project which I have to deliver in 10 months, and it needs 200 employees simultaneously working. So practically it's not possible for me. I'll take 2-3 months in order to recruit these many people. So I do this feasibility study in this particular phase. Now once I'm done with it, I'll go for plan, where I'll see that okay, what exactly I want from this planning. So in this particular phase, my team will go ahead with determining the cost and the resources and the number of plans. So it can be number of people involved. So it can be your plans plus sub-plans. Sub-plans may be that okay, what will be the software requirements, what will be the hardware requirements, whether we have to move towards cloud or not, whether the requirement, based on the requirements, whether we'll be able to provide this thing in-house, or I need to get in touch with a third-party developer to provide some resources or not. So all those plannings, it's like if suppose I go ahead with coming up with a building, let's say I have to come up with a new hostel, so I need to plan that okay, how many people I need, what should be the budget, and then whether I need some approvals or not, some machineries I need. So those things, in case of softwares, I need to look for whether I need some licenses or not. So all these things we'll plan in this particular phase. After which, once I'm done with it, I'm okay. Let's say that okay, I will be able to come up with this particular product. So I take a call and then I'll go ahead with designing. So in this, I'll refer to my SRS. Now SRS stands for Software Requirement Specification. This has all the details of what all things the customer has asked for. So based on this SRS, I'll go ahead with design documents. So what I'll do is I'll first of all refer this SRS, which will work as a reference. It will help the architects to come up with the software architecture. Right. So this SRS will help me in coming up with my software architecture. And this is something which is a high level design. Right. Software architecture is something which is a high level design. We'll separately talk about software architecture as well. And based on this, I'll come up with the design documents, because all those designs will be there, right? All your UML, UCADs and everything will be added to it. Now, this design approach will give me an idea about the modules of the product, along with all the communications and all the kind of data flows and the control flows that will be proposed in this particular problem, right? So this is something which is a crucial phase, just because we'll be collecting and incorporating all those design decisions in my document. Now once I finalize and I freeze these design documents, I go to this developing and coding phase. In this particular phase, the actual development of the product starts. Actual development means now I'll start coding. Now the role of programmer comes into picture. I'll refer to the detailed design documents, and based on that I'll start coding. All my I'll use class diagrams in order to come up with the class structures and all. And in this particular phase, these developers will inform all the usages of compilers, interpreters, debuggers, or whatnot. We'll be going ahead with maybe a high level language which is like C, C++, Pascal, Java, PHP, or whatnot. It depends on whatever has been specified and what all potentials I have. I'll go ahead with that. Now, once I'm done with coding, I'll move to the testing phase. This means that I'll ensure that whatever I have coded works fine or not. So I test this particular piece of code which has been passed on from this design or coding phase. Once it is tested, now it's high time to deploy. Now this deployment means I will go ahead with the deployment of this particular product in the market. See, I have tested the product, my product is ready. So it's high time to deploy it. That means I should release this particular product formally in the market. So that says that I am releasing this particular product. It's like, let's start using whatever we have got. And the goal of the software deployment phase is making the software product run in the production environment so that the actual usage starts now. Although these days, many organizations, they prefer to move the product to the different deployment environment and then they bring it online. So letting it work offline and then bringing it online. This also is done in case of financial, all the applications which are in the financial market. So where the efforts to ensure the safety is very high. Now, once my product is deployed, my end user may report some issues with the product. So I need to maintain this particular product. Now this maintenance is not due to the issues only. See, one thing is for sure that there are some issues. Another thing can be there are some updations required just because the end user has asked for a new functionality. In that case also I need to go for maintenance. So in that case we enter into a maintenance phase, bring some changes. It can be updation, it can be removing some bugs or errors, and that particular thing is of course done post deployment. So this is all about a generic software development life cycle. Now let's see, there are some software development life cycle models. In this particular course we'll talk about waterfall model, prototype model, your rapid application development model, your spiral and iterative model, your V model, and the fountain model. There are some more models as well, but we'll restrict our discussion to these 6 models only. To start with, what we'll do is we'll go ahead with waterfall model. This is why I have added to this to the first number, is that it is directly related to your generic software lifecycle model. That means if you remember the stages of generic software development lifecycle model, then you can take a call on what will be the waterfall model, right? So it's almost a kind of replica, the same diagram represented in a different manner. So let's see what basically the waterfall model is. So this waterfall model is also known as your linear sequential life cycle model. So in some of the literatures you will find this particular name, and this is one of the very first software development life cycle to be introduced. A very simple one, very easy to understand and very easy to use, just because it is bit stringent, so there are some drawbacks as well. We'll talk about those drawbacks in the coming slides. So one of the earliest approach, and of course it illustrates the software development life cycle. Just now we studied this SDLC, that's what it does, and all these activities of a project is broken down into the linear sequential phases. That's why it is called as your linear sequential life cycle model. So what we have is, in the first phase we do the feasibility study. So we try to identify that the project which we are going to take is feasible for my company or not, whether I'll be able to come up with this particular software system or not, software solution or not, whether the problem itself is not solvable, so I may not be able to come up with the software solution. So that kind of feasibility study is done. Once I identify that, okay, yes, this particular problem can be solved, then what I do is I go ahead with requirements gathering. Right. In this particular phase, the detailed requirements of the system is gathered. So requirements to be gathered. Once I have gathered the requirements, I'll go ahead with design. I need to come up with the design documents. Once I'm done with the design documents, let's code. Once I'm done with coding, let's test it. After testing, deploy it, and if required, maintain it. So this is almost similar to what we studied in a generic software development lifecycle model, but there are some issues associated with it. Also, in some of the literatures, you'll find that testing and implementation is clubbed into one, or maybe design and coding clubbed into one. So don't get confused. Just make sure that all these things are strict phases, and one can move from one phase to another once a particular phase gets over. That's something which is a major drawback, This is something which is a major drawback of this particular thing. So it's like error can be fixed during one phase only, because let's say after testing I have found that there are some errors, so I cannot move back to the previous phase, and that's something which is a major drawback. So let's quickly talk about the benefits of this model. First of all, it is very easy to understand and it is easy to use as well. And this particular model is providing me the structure to my inexperienced staff, because they know that once one phase gets over, then only I'll be moving to the next phase. So there is a simple structure, and if my staff is inexperienced, so I know that I have to only inform to my staff that firstly finish this phase, then move to this particular phase. And in this one, your milestones are well understood. I know when to start, when to stop, and when to move to the next phase. Since I cannot move back to the previous stage, so I need to have a freezed requirements. Right, my requirement should not be dynamic and it keeps on changing. For example, let's say initially I, as a end user, I've said that okay, I need an application on PHP, and when the coding starts, all of a sudden I say no, let's go ahead with some other scripting language. So that's not possible in case of waterfall model, and it specifically says that requirement should be freezed, it should be stable, then only use this particular model. And since everything is fixed, everything is pre-planned, so it is good for management control. That means planning, staffing, tracking. See, I know, let's say I know that okay, these two phases, or maybe these two phases need 2 months of time. So I'll say that okay, my design team should be free for first 2 months, and then it should be ready. Then only my design team will come into picture. Right, that's the time when I'll take a call that okay, let's bring my design team and then go ahead with these particular discussions. Right, so it's like it is easier to manage for planning, staffing and tracking. And this works well when quality is more important than cost or schedule. Of course, looking at this particular structure, this is something which is time consuming. Right, this is something which is time consuming. So it consumes a lot amount of time for each phase. So I need to have a very good budget. I need to have quality as a priority. In that case only I should go for waterfall model. So these were some benefits of using a waterfall model. Let's now talk about some of the drawbacks of the same model. So first thing is no flexibility. I cannot move from one phase to the previous phase. That's not possible. That's a major drawback. So moving back a phase or two can be a costly affair, because if I'm moving back, so I have to start the same thing again. And sometimes it can give me a false impression of progress. That means although my testing wasn't done properly and I identified some bugs, and since the model says to move to the next phase, I'm not moving to the previous because it will be a costly affair. So I move to the next phase. So it is giving me a false impression of progress. On top of it, it does not reflect problem solving nature of software development. That means iterations of phases that I need to iterate, reiterate. If suppose I identify, that's what you do in your labs. If suppose you are having a data structures lab, you find some errors in your code, you try to identify and bring some changes. That means testing is done, identified some bugs, and then once again you have brought some changes to the application. But that's not possible in this particular case. Then we have like little opportunity for customers to preview the system. I don't have any prototype in this particular case. How my client is going to judge? I cannot get any prototype. So how my client is going to judge that how my system is going to look like? So that's something which is a major cause of concern in case of waterfall model. In addition to this, the documentation occupies a lot of time for developers and testers. And even the small changes or the errors that arise in the completed software may cause a lot of problems, because as I said, moving back to the previous stage is something which is very, very costly. So now let's try to identify that after all these benefits and all these drawbacks, where should I actually use the waterfall model? Now this one point is which is common in every model, that the requirements are very well known. Now this applies to each and every model. Use a particular model when requirements are very well known. When my product definition is stable, it's freezed, it's fixed, then go ahead with waterfall model. I have clearly understood the technology. I know the pros and cons. I know when to use. I know when to avoid. So all these things which when I have in mind, then I can go ahead with this. When I have a new version of an existing product, why so? Because I know the requirements well in advance. All the requirements are known to me. In that case, I'll go ahead with a new version of existing product. Another scope of using this particular waterfall model is when I'm porting an existing product to a new platform. Right, so this is specifically works in SPL. Now SPL stands for your software product lines. Right, so this works in software product lines. So this was all about waterfall model. But let's bring a minor change to this particular model. And this is one of the change, which is your iterative waterfall model. Now this iterative model, waterfall model gives you a little bit of flexibility. Flexibility in the terms of moving from one phase to the immediate previous phase. That means I started from feasibility study, I moved to requirement analysis. I observed that okay, there are some changes, I need to relook to the feasibility study, I moved back to the previous stage. And once again I've come back to this. From requirements analysis, I moved to design. I've identified that no, there are some issues with the requirements that has been identified with the design documents. Let's move to the previous one. Similarly, from the coding, I can move back to the previous design. From the design, I can move to the previous requirements. So, to the immediate previous one, that means from one phase to the immediate previous phase movement is allowed. And frankly speaking, this comes very handy because let's say I'm in testing phase, I need to go to coding phase, right? I can go ahead with this because here I have identified some bugs in the application. So I can immediately report and I'll say that okay, let's code once again. Now once again the code has been passed to the testing team. Once again I've identified some bugs. Let's once again go back to the coding phase. So this kind of movement is allowed, and this kind of movement is very handy as far as the development is concerned. So some of the major drawbacks, which was like this waterfall model, which is like very stringent, right, freezed, fixed. So some amount of flexibility I can observe here. I'm easily moving to the previous phase. From the implementation, I observed something and I'm immediately going back to the testing phase. Even from the coding, I observed that no, based on the design documents, the coding is not fitting well. Let's move back to this design phase. And from design, once again, I can come back to the coding phase. So all these iterations can be made in this particular iterative waterfall model. And this makes this particular waterfall model very handy. That means in this we observe that okay, this particular movement not possible, this particular movement not possible, this particular movement not possible. So all these things are possible in this particular approach of iterative waterfall model, right? Moving from one direction to the other, this is possible in this particular case. So this was all about waterfall model and a slight modification to the waterfall model resulting into an iterative waterfall model. In our next video, we'll talk about something which is called as prototype model, where we'll see that okay, there is a prototype available and based on which I take feedback from the end user, and then based on that I take a call on the final product, or I may need to reiterate in order to come up with a different kind of prototype. So we'll talk about prototype model in our next video.